Okay, so now I'd like to share with you a study that I conducted using firms from Australia. And the purpose of this study was to evaluate and get a better understanding about the relationship between market orientation and the power or the influence of the marketing department and how that relationship affects firm performance. So what we did in this study was we surveyed 122 Australian firms, and the respondents to our survey were senior level managers such as general managers, vice presidents, or directors. And we sent them a survey, and we had them answer some questions about market orientation, about the power or the influence of their marketing department, and about their firm performance in terms of market share, in terms of sales and profitability. And what we did was we classified the companies in terms of their market orientation level into low and high. And we also split the companies in our sample into low marketing department influence firms and high marketing department influence firms. So this slide shows you a 2x2 matrix where the 122 companies that were in our sample were grouped into these four different clusters. The first cluster, we named them marketing diluters, where companies that belonged into this cluster were classified as having a high level of market orientation, but low marketing department influence. Marketing powerhouses were classified as having high market orientation and also having high marketing department influence. Marketing deficients were classified as companies that had low level of market orientation and also a low level of marketing department influence. And then lastly, companies that were classified as marketing concentrators were companies that had a low level of market orientation, but a high level of marketing department power and influence. And what we were interested in was we were interested in looking at, now that we've classified our sample into these four different groups, what were their level of firm performance? And what we found was something that was fairly interesting, at least what we thought, in terms of the varying level of business performance. It's no surprise that if you look at the diagonal cells here, the marketing deficients and the marketing powerhouses, the highest level of business performance was observed from the marketing powerhouses. So these were the companies that had a high market orientation and also a high marketing department influence. So that comes as no surprise, because you would expect that companies that are high on both, they would probably perform the best. Whereas companies that are low on both would probably perform the worst. And that's exactly what we found. However, what was really revealing were the two companies that were in the off diagonals, which are the marketing diluters and the marketing concentrators. So the second highest business performance came from companies that were classified as marketing diluters as opposed to marketing concentrators. So companies that had a high market orientation but a low marketing department influence, which are essentially the marketing diluters, had a higher firm performance than marketing concentrators, which were companies that had low market orientation but a high marketing department influence. So the bottom line, the learning point from this study was that if you can't achieve high levels on both market orientation and having a strong, influential, powerful marketing department, and you can only have one at the expense of the other, then the results from this study show that it is probably better to focus on developing a high level of market orientation as opposed to making your marketing department influential and powerful at the expense of and elevated a high level of market orientation. So if you can only do one and not both, it's better to focus on market orientation as opposed to developing a strong, powerful, influential marketing department. I'd like to share with you on this next slide the relationship between market orientation and innovation. So some people, say, and some studies have shown that listening to customers is good. That's a good thing, but listening too much can be a bad thing because customers only tell you what they know. So this study looks at the relationship between market orientation and innovation. Innovation from three different perspectives. If you look at the horizontal, at the top there, we have LE, which is defined as line extensions, MTP, which is defined as Me Too products, basically copycats, and then NWP, which is defined as new to the world products, which are radically, very different products from what customers see in the market. And the line extension can be classified as products that fall somewhere in between Me Too products and new to the world products. And then for market orientation, we go back to the cultural view of market orientation, where, if you recall, the cultural view of market orientation had three elements: CUO, which stands for customer orientation; CPO, which stands for competitor orientation; and IC, which stands for interfunctional coordination. So the way that you can read this 3x3 matrix is the following. So a company that focuses on CPO, if you focus on competitor orientation, that's going to lead to less line extension. So that negative means that there's a negative correlation. So companies that focus on competitor orientation, that will lead to less line extension, whereas companies that focus on interfunctional coordination, that will result in more line extension. Moving on to the relationship with MTP, Me Too products, if you focus on customer orientation, that will lead to less Me Too products, whereas if you focus on competitor orientation, that's going to result in more Me Too products. And if you focus on interfunctional coordination, again, that's going to lead to less Me Too products. So the interesting finding regarding Me Too products is that if you solely focus on competitor orientation, in other words, if you just listen to and are too focused on what your competition is doing, that may inadvertently result in just producing copycat type of products that are really not that much different from what's available in the current market. Whereas if you focus on customer orientation, that will lead to less Me Too products, as will interfunctional coordination. And then lastly, if you really want to develop new to the world products, this study shows that you need to underscore and focus on customer orientation, because that's where that plus sign is. Whereas if you focus on competitor orientation, that's going to lead to less new to the world products. So again, that's an interesting finding, because if the goal is to develop radically new products, new to the world type of products, that means that you need to focus less on competitor orientation, but more on customer orientation. Whereas if you want to focus on copycat and develop very similar products, then you can just focus on competitor orientation. Whereas if you focus on customer orientation, that's going to lead to less Me Too the world products. So depending on what the goal of the company is in terms of the types of products that they want to introduce in the market, this study implies that you may want to focus on different elements of market orientation, because focusing on different elements of the market orientation will result in different types of innovative products that range from copycats all the way to radically different, new to the world type of products.